with just a standard, right? And unfortunately, that is overall taking a very negative view on the industry, because what we see go viral is, here's this chore list on the fridge that I have, or more recently saw TikTok go over 3 million views specifically to pushing bins. And that's the stuff that goes viral. And there needs to be a standard across the industry where guests know what to expect. Why is it some units I have to do the dishes, some units I don't? Why is it some units I have to push bins, some units I don't? Some units I have to throw the linens in the washer, some units I don't. And unfortunately, this industry is so great, and it's really revolutionized the way that people travel. But we're still struggling on the product side of things, where everybody seems to have their own sets and standards, and we need to move towards a uniform approach to what our product really is.
You're listening to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, a podcast for those who are in and around the hospitality industry who love, live, and breathe what they do. You can join us for candid and unscripted conversations with hospitality experts and founders as we go deeper into their personal stories while they're sharing their triumphs and trials that got them to where they are today. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and you're listening to an episode of Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast. Now, let's begin. Welcome back, Slick Talkers, and this episode I'm sitting down with Justin, who is the founder and CEO of FIDO, or as you may know them, formerly as Trash Caddies. Now, he's going to share insight into his story, a little bit of his personal life, and how coming to America was such an important piece of his story, obviously, and the ability to actually build the company where they are today. They've acquired a company called Bin Better in North Carolina, and FIDO has just been going through so many changes and actually empowering hosts and operators alike to remove trash as a headache for their vacation rental business. And I'm very excited about this episode because not only is FIDO a great friend of the show, they're also a great partner of Hospitality FM. So with Hospitality FM, they have partnered and sponsored a couple of our podcasts like Slick Talk, like Good Morning Hospitality, and of course, No Vacancy with Natalie Palmer. And we're just super excited to keep working with them. But in order to actually, work with a great partner like FIDO, we want to tell their story. So in this episode, you're going to hear a ton about the company, what they offer, and what they're thinking about when it comes to infrastructure for the vacation rental industry versus how hotels are all centralized with things like housekeeping and trash removal and all this other stuff. So very insightful conversation with Justin. I'm really excited to keep working with him and the team at FIDO. We give a couple shout outs throughout this episode. So stay tuned. And of course, like always, make sure to like and subscribe and tune in every week, just like normal. All right, now let's begin with the episode. All right, Justin, welcome to the podcast. It has been way long overdue since we've had the opportunity to actually chat, but also to get you on the show. So thank you for joining me today. How are we doing? How are we doing today?
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Long time coming, long time fan. When we budgeted out what we wanted to sponsor moving to 2025, you were at the top of that list. So really excited to be on here and to chat. But yeah, man, life's good. 2025 starting off with a bang. So doing great. Excited for the rest of the year.
I love it. Well, for the listeners who may have not heard of you or heard of FIDO, they got a little glimpse in our intro today on the podcast, but I would love to start with your personal journey before we get into the journey of FIDO and what you guys have been building over there. But when did you get into short-term rentals or hospitality, and what was your initial entry? Because I think we all kind of stumble into this fun industry. So I want to hear your stumble in here.
Yeah, it's a story that really sort of built this whole thing out. I went to school for accounting. I went to work at PwC. I was doing all that fun audit stuff, which was a great career path. But I always had this mindset of wanting to start a business, but never really knowing what it was. And I always dabbled in random stuff. Like I had a Shopify store at one point. I think we all did probably. But about 3.5 years ago, I booked an Airbnb in Sarasota, which is about an hour south of Tampa, where I spent the last 10 years of my life. And I show up, nice Airbnb, nightly rate was pretty high up there. But the first thing that happened is the property manager messages me and they're like, hey, can you push the trash bins out for the city tomorrow? And I said, yeah, sure. So I go out and there's 4 full bins of trash from whoever had been there before me. So push the bins out. Next day, hey, if the cities come by, can you push them back? Sure, let me haul the trash bins back. So as great as that trip was, that's what stuck with me, right? And it's so important to get those little things right, because as I was leaving, I was like, man, I can't believe that's what you do at Airbnbs. If I go to a hotel, I never have to haul people's trash around. So I looked into it, and there wasn't a solution, at least not in Tampa, that I could find. So that's when I started a company called Raging Raccoon, and the whole gig was, we'll push your bins out for you. And there was a whole play on, raccoons and all that fun stuff. So built that for about 3 years. About 6 months ago, I was approached by Trash Caddies. So Trash Caddies did the same thing, but out of Austin, Texas. They're huge in Austin. They were nowhere else. Whereas for us, we built these relationships, and we were in 4 or 5 states at the time and had some good connections in the industry. So we were acquired by Trash Caddies, came over to Trash Caddies as the CEO here, started building that out. And then as we were doing that, we started doing a lot more work for our property managers. One main pain point we saw was inspections, primarily pre-stay inspections. So making sure the unit is guest ready when a guest shows up. So we started to dabble in that and realized there was a true pain point in this industry. So we started an inspection service offering. And so about 2 months ago, decided that a rebrand made sense to get away from just Trash Caddies, because we do a lot more. So we went to FIDO, property manager's best friend. But yeah, that's the whole quick outline of how I got here today.
Like I said in the intro, Slick Talkers, this episode is brought to you by FIDO. So not only can you get your trash, aka bin to curb service through FIDO, but if you are using a current provider, at the end of this episode, Justin is offering $50 per property that you convert over to FIDO. Now that could be a lot of money. If you're a big operator, it's actually going to be a ton of money. So check your wallets and check your P&L statements as you see that nice cash balance hit your account. But also, don't forget, if you're a small host and just growing your portfolio, growing your business, there's nothing wrong with that. $50 still makes a huge, huge difference. So grab the link in the show notes, go to getfido.com, let them know that Wil Slickers sent you from Slick Talk, and you'll get that special offer today. Now, back to the episode. I love it. And obviously we are big fans of you guys here at Hospitality FM. You and I have got to chat at many conferences. And I kind of want to go into one of the first topics I was really excited to talk to you about, because on Good Morning Hospitality, we always do kind of yearly predictions. And one of my predictions, which I kind of feel like is more of a hope than a prediction, but we saw such a flood of cash come into the space from venture capital, private equity, and of course, traditional business investors, that I think a lot of that investment and that capital went towards the shiny, SaaS products and the softwares and property management softwares, which again are a core piece of a brand or operator's business. But I look at you and I look at Well and Good, and I look at these on the ground companies that are doing the work that actually makes more of a difference than how the guest found you or how the guest was communicating with you. And my hope and prediction is that the shift of cash flow or shift of investment will go into building infrastructure in destinations, building infrastructure in companies like yours, where your guys' company is actually handling these on the ground issues. So I'm kind of calling them kind of a ground market. And so would love to know what your guys' thoughts and approaches when it comes to the industry. Where does the investment really matter when it comes to building out these infrastructures for not operators, but for brands that are not trying to be 24/7? Like, I know a lot of us get into hospitality for the love of good guest experience and executing awesome human relationships and moments. Yet we get stuck pulling trash to the curb, having no one inspect. Yet we have great cleaners that are human and miss things, and just these little attention to detail pieces that hotels don't really have to struggle with as much. So when it comes to investment and to growth in this industry and making it sustainable, where do you guys see that approach, and how do you think we're going to be moving forward in this next era of short-term rentals?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great tech companies, but it seems like now there are a dime a dozen, and there's a million different types of PM platforms or automated messaging or whatever the case may be. But the single most important factor is actually having humans run your Airbnb. So who's actually showing up to clean? How are you scheduling them? How good are they at the clean? Who's showing up to do an inspection? Who's moving the trash? And I think that it's less sexy, right? Trash, when I first started Raging Raccoon, trash is not sexy. Nobody really wants to invest in trash, but trash has been around forever and will continue to be around. But these are services that PMs don't really want to pay for, but you're going to reach an inflection point where, what is my time worth? Is it worth more for my time to pay FIDO to handle this task so I can grow my portfolio? Or do I actually want to spend time pushing bins or doing inspections? So I think what's going to happen is you need to start setting yourself apart as a PM. The software, is available to everybody. And at this point, I almost feel like every great PM has good software. But how good are your actual human operations? Are you having to refund nights because you didn't do an inspection? Or are you actually paying a little bit extra to make sure that inspection got done? I think, a lot of times you have your cleaners do them, which is great. But if a cleaner is done on Tuesday and your guest comes in on Thursday, a lot can happen between those 2 days at that property. So you need to get eyes on it. So long-winded response to say that I think moving forward, we're going to see a lot more investment into the non-sexy side of things that actually makes a business go.
Sorry for the quick interruption, Slick Talkers, but as you know, we've been long-term partners with Hostfully, and Hostfully has been such a great platform for my property management company, which in this episode, I do state that I have fully exited. So when I was a property manager, we were using Hostfully not only on our desktops, but also on the go. So Hostfully has a great mobile app that you can manage your business on. And trust me, it's night and day. As a person who is traveling a ton, being able to log in through the Hostfully app was incredible. Their marketplace is significant, and you're going to be hearing a ton more about Hostfully on this podcast as we're continuing to deepen our relationship and collaborate on more content. If you heard an earlier episode just a couple weeks ago, you would have heard Frank and Fred, who joined the podcast to discuss the Hostfully industry report that they do every year. So not only were there a ton of insights, but after meeting with Frank after the episode, he's going to be dedicated to our listeners. So if you are just on the fence about switching property management softwares or on the fence about adding another tool to your property management tech stack, then you can be assured that Frank on the Hostfully team is going to take great care of our Slick Talkers. I wanted to make sure he was okay with this. I was like, okay, are you sure people can reach out and connect directly and give out all this information? And he said, yes. So Frank is dedicated to you just like I am. And we want to make sure that the Hostfully users, whether you are moving over from a current platform or just thinking about starting your first time of getting on a property management software, you're going to be in great hands and you're going to get a special offer that Frank will share with you behind the scenes as we are still finalizing some of our marketing stuff with them. But at the end of the day, you're going to be well taken care of. So get with Hostfully right now. Link in the show notes, hostfully.com. If you're thinking about moving your property management software or just getting onto your first property management software, then check out Hostfully today. You won't regret it. Now back to the episode. Well, I want to kind of ask you a question around the non-sexy things because Michael Golden has always stated, actually the first time that I actually met Michael during COVID, the one thing is that he was really passionate about is like regulation is a big issue for short-term rentals more than obviously hotels. And the big reason of that is because of noise, trash, and of course, parking. trash, like you said, has been around a long time. And it can be a real pain in the butt when there's a obviously overflow of garbage at a vacation rental inside a residential community and even a multifamily community or whatever the type of scenario is. And it's a logistical nightmare, right? Like you have to have real human bodies do real human things, and you can't just apply AI, which again, I'm a big fan of AI, but at the end of the day, AI won't clean the toilet. They won't take out the trash. They won't do it. So what type of sexy products does FIDO use, or have you guys built products? How do you streamline the operational piece? How do you make it easier to make it more attractive? And I don't even know, because I know you guys acquired Been Better out in North Carolina. So I'm kind of curious too, do you guys see a FIDO moving in the direction of investing into a software type platform or anything like that? I'm very curious where you guys see that approach.
Yeah, that touches on two things. That's a great question. So we've acquired a lot of small operations. It's not an easy job. At the end of the day, if we're just talking about bin pushing, you have to manage a lot of contractors or employees, and you have to manage a lot of units, and you have to make sure that the bins are out, the bins are back, the bins are where they're supposed to be, and that are also some units are HOAs, so you need to have them in before certain other ones. What we realized was that there's a lot of local operations that are crushing it, but what they've done is they've created a job for themselves, because at the end of the day, unless you can get that volume in that market, the margins are pretty tight. So what we saw was an opportunity to go into these markets and say, hey, you've done a good job. Would you be open to a payout? We'll bring these units in, we'll give them our tech, and we'll roll them up. And that's been very successful for us both ways. But speaking of our tech, I don't really see us building a tech that we go out in there and sell. We use a lot of tools in-house for our routing and our inspections, but we love partnerships, right? So for our inspections, why spend the time and resources and money to build out an inspection tool when Breezeway exists, right? So, I got to talking with Breezeway. I said, here's what we're doing. Here's what we've done. A lot of our customers don't know who Breezeway is, so we can help you grow in that way. But in turn, we would like this sort of access to manage these sort of inspections, and they were all game. So the inspection side of things was all run through Breezeway, which does an amazing job. Great partner. Shout out to them. And then on our routing side, we do have an in-house software that we use for a lot of that stuff. But again, not something that we're thinking about developing and selling out there on the tech side of things.
So FIDO won't become an Uber of trash removal or anything like that?
Well, I was more so thinking of selling our proprietary tech. That won't happen. Now, in terms of us building a larger tech that is acquired by somebody, not thinking of an exit today, but that's always the goal, right? So building a good product, a tech that makes sense, and then exiting in a way that makes sense for everybody. But in terms of selling our proprietary technology, not something that we've thought about.
All right, Slick Talkers, I can't believe I have taken so long to get to this point in my business, and it actually blows my mind. I talk to friends and mentors and even my team, and they're like, why have we not done this sooner? And marketing has been a really tough issue for me as a media company founder. I had a problem with marketing, but those days are gone because we partnered with Send Squared. So they're a global partner with Hospitality FM, where we're going to use their CRM, which is customly built for hospitality businesses, hospitality entrepreneurs, just like listeners of this podcast. So you're going to go to Send Squared. You're going to tell them that Will from Slick Talk sent you. You're going to enhance your business by powering your marketing with Send Squared, email newsletters. So if you're a short-term rental brand or a hotel brand, this is going to be perfect for you, because a lot of people have an issue or trying to find ways to tie marketing dollars spent to ROI of dollars in the door. And I will say, I've seen behind the scenes of Send Squared, and it's crazy. Not just with our company, it's behind the scenes of property management brands just like you listeners out there in the world. They're actually generating $1 million months through their email campaigns with their platform. So if you have been building a strong email list and kind of a following of guests, then you need to get on board with Send Squared and see how your email marketing and your campaigns can actually generate significant revenue way beyond what you can get from an OTA. So owning your audience is super important. We've known this, but we've never taken the action outside of collecting emails. We've never did anything with them. And so now having Send Squared to power our company, just like it can power yours, is going to make or break your company in this changing ecosystem that we are seeing constantly in hospitality. So get Send Squared today. Grab the link in the show notes. Let them know that Will sent you. They're a great team. And of course, like always, we are back to the episode. When it comes to, I love that you mentioned the word product, because I kind of did a post a while ago that I'm reading some books, actually kind of behind me over here, around building products, and it's more for product teams. And I'm not a tech guy. I'm not building tech, and I don't dream to build tech. But I understand from a product standpoint, right? In our industry, it's no different if you talk about a product that is a software versus a product that is a lodging association, whether it's a short-term rental, a hotel. That's your core product, right? Linens count as part of your product as quality. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into executing this product. Where do you guys see operators that you guys have partnered with? And I love that you mentioned partnerships, because we're also a big believer in that. Why do things when, why build something inside ourselves when we could just partner with someone who's already built it and is our great team and great resource and expert in their field? But like, when it comes to the product of short-term rentals, where do you guys see your partners really excelling? And then also, I'm kind of curious where you see maybe partners that come on board that were really struggling and then start to realize, like, oh my gosh, like, this product of ours needs X, Y, and Z. And they start, kind of fixing things for the better experience of the guest. How do you guys imagine product inside FIDO?
Yeah, I think what we see is that for us is two different customers. We have the large PMs, 20 plus units, who seem to have the systems in place, but then we'll get the 1 to 2 unit mom and pops who really struggle. And you need to think about where you want to be 1 to 2 years down the line. If you're happy with 1 to 2 units, you can push your own trash bins. But what we're seeing is that there's an inflection point of about 5 to 10 units when you realize it is cheaper and better for me to offsource this than it is for me to do it myself. And when we talk about product, I think one thing that's really lacking in this industry as a whole is just a standard across the board, right?
100%.
You can book a hotel anywhere. You know what you're going to get. You're going to get a clean room, trash is out, concierge at the front. And it seems like Airbnb, and I hate to say just Airbnb, Vrbo as well, short-term rentals, we struggle with just a standard, right? And unfortunately, that is overall taking a very negative view on the industry, because what we see go viral is, here's this chore list on the fridge that I have, or more recently saw TikTok go over 3 million views specifically to pushing bins. And that's the stuff that goes viral. And there needs to be a standard across the industry where guests know what to expect. Why is it some units I have to do the dishes, some units I don't? Why is it some units I have to push bins, some units I don't? Some units I have to throw the linens in the washer, some units I don't. And unfortunately, this industry is so great, and it's really revolutionized the way that people travel. But we're still struggling on the product side of things, where everybody seems to have their own sets and standards, and we need to move towards a uniform approach to what our product really is.
I love that you bring that up. I'm curious, what would be an ideal standard for you guys? If you're the ones with the boots on the ground who see this, right? You're doing the inspections, taking the trash to the curb, doing the junk removal, X, Y, and Z things, right? Like, you see it. You see the product every day. I'm very curious because, Ashley Ching at Inhaven has brought up a kind of a core standard that they're kind of trying to implement with their customers and helping that area. But everyone tries to do it their own way. And it's, funny because like every market's so different, but every operator thinks that their way is better, or maybe, it just is the name of the game that they can't do cookie cutter. They don't want to be like a hotel, et cetera, et cetera. Yet, like you said, hotels just execute at the best ability of consistency, especially if like, hey, I'm booking a choice hotel, Holiday Inn, maybe like, I know that's kind of like a mid-scale, just above budget or economy. I know what to expect. I'm not going to get, probably the warmest welcome, but at least my room is going to be clean and blah, blah, blah. Versus if I stay at a autograph collection with Marriott, I know like they're going to have my exact specific pillow count that I like, with the down comforter and the type of welcome gift, and a warm welcome when I walk in the door. Hopefully no long line at the front desk, and easy access to my room. But that's the type of standard I expect with that. Do you think we need to implement certain scales of brands? So like kind of luxury, ultra luxury, upper scale, mid scale, budget, economy, to then create those standards? Or do you think standards in general should focus kind of like what Ashley said? I'm sorry for this long-winded question, but Ashley kind of focused on bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom, right? Those core products need to be the same. And then the rest of the house or rest of the property can kind of be at the owner's creativity or the manager's creativity. But yeah, just kind of curious, like, where do you guys see product and the brand standards going?
Yeah, I think I hadn't really thought about those tier lists as maybe as part of a listing description. I don't know if that's where you were going, but I think as a baseline, a unit should be clean, a unit should be welcoming, and a guest should have no chores, right? To me, pushing out bins is a
100%.
chore. And, everybody wants a good review. And if somebody's taken away something negative, they might not leave a good review. They might not leave a bad one. But what's almost just as worse is they just don't leave a review at all. And they're a lot less amped to leave a review if they don't feel like they were blown away. They might not feel like, hey, I need to leave a bad review. But next thing you know, you're not getting reviews. And it's not because you don't have a great, bot set up that messages them 60 times. It's because they were not very pleased with it. But for me, at a bare minimum, the unit just needs to be clean, welcoming, and there just needs to be a minimal chore list. And it gets tricky, right? Because we've gotten reached out to by some really remote markets who just don't even have a trash yard. So something like that, you might expect a little bit more out of the guests, but there's no reason why somebody should be booking a stay in Austin, Texas, and they could book something next door and they would have to do a lot less for you. So, it's tough because it's an industry with, I think, for a lot of operators, shrinking margins. And a lot of times, this all boils down to the homeowner and the investor. And if they even consider adding on an extra cost that really should be passed along to them, they might feel like they might lose that unit. So they continue to take on these operational inefficiencies in order to just satisfy the homeowners, and ultimately, they take a ding on the reputation and on the standard of their units on that.
Yeah. I'm curious with those destinations, right? They don't have a junkyard. They don't have, maybe the type of warehousing that's required for such things like linen and laundry and all the, furnishings. I was talking to Near with the Miming Group out in LA, and he's, out before the fires. He was like, look, I have warehouses of furniture, warehouses of all the linen and plates and silverware and cups and, anything you could think of. And, it's funny because like these operators have to get these warehouses or storage units. And I remember talking to Jonathan from Well and Good, and, when they're cleaning properties, right, they have 18 physical locations. For you guys, you seem to have that perfect blend of being able to be central in Austin, but you guys are serving all over the country. How do you look at like actual building infrastructure and like warehousing or other things like that? Is that something FIDO, looks to solve with those markets that maybe don't have the trash? Like, I'm not saying that FIDO is going to start creating junkyards or anything, but I'm just like curious, because when you don't have that, it's so hard. Like, how do you get creative to come up with a solution when there's nothing to support that for you? Yeah,
I think for us, it depends on how big the pain point is. If there is enough volume and revenue in it, we'll open a junkyard. The reality is it's not. So it's unfortunate, but a lot of times when we have customers reach out, they're like, I have my guests have to take this to the dump yard. We can't really help in a way that it makes sense, because at the end of the day, we are a business and we need to have a margin. And that there needs to be enough room for that to grow. One interesting thing you brought up is physical location. So we're out of Austin. but we have, services across the US now. With the bin to curb stuff, that's heavily logistics. We don't really need central locations. But what we're seeing is the more inspections we start doing, the more that PMs want us to do. So, a PM might have 50 units and they're realizing that it's not sustainable and scalable to have 10 full-time employees who they have to pay mileage reimbursements for and health benefits and raises at the end of the year. And I think in a lot of ways, in that sense, we're being disruptive to that industry, because what we're showing them is you can pay us a fraction of that cost as a contractor, and our sole focus is making sure your units gets ready. So we'll show up, we'll karate chop a pillow, we'll make it ready for you. And what they're doing is they're realizing that they don't need as much staff, but a benefit of their staff is that they will restock units. So we're getting a lot of requests of, what about restocking? So not something we're doing yet, but something we're keeping a close eye, and especially, where we're growing a lot in, which is South Florida, is potentially having a quick central location where our folks can restock and then restock a unit. So that's our take on that.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's funny because there's a lot of underutilized space, obviously, inside the vacation home. Every home usually has like an owner's closet that is filled with junk that doesn't need to be in there, or it's a chaotic mess. But yeah, no, that's a really interesting way of looking. I want to shift gears a little bit, though. We've been hearing a lot of the FIDO journey through this conversation, which I think is great because it really does break down the decade, maybe not decade, but the long journey. It feels like a decade sometimes as an entrepreneur, the long journey that you've been on. And I want to kind of ask you, just like from your perspective as a founder and entrepreneur, acquiring companies and smaller operators, being acquired yourselves and going into some brand changes, there's a lot of moving pieces. How do you as a founder, what's your approach in balancing your Justin's life outside of FIDO, but then also managing a growing, scaling business with such like huge challenges inside of this industry? No one really wants to talk about or take on these, issues, trash, inspections, etc. The boots on the ground stuff is the hardest piece, and no one really wants to take it on. And they, we see some people pop up here and there, but we'd love to know, just like from your perspective as a founder and entrepreneur, how do you approach the balance and growing life and having a business that it's super dependent on you, or maybe lack of? I'm curious to see the inside of the founder a little bit more.
Yeah, man. Honestly, it's a ton of fun. I wouldn't be doing anything else. If this wasn't it for me, I'd probably be doing some sort of business. But this is my comfort zone. So there's so much stuff going on all day, every day. But if there ever is a quiet day, I feel like I'm not doing enough. So in terms of my personal life, it's a healthy balance. But honestly, I want to give a huge shout out to Alex Graham, our COO over at FIDO. He's been with me for about 3 years now, through Rage and Raccoon here. And he's really my secret weapon. So if I feel like I'm overwhelmed, there's nothing I can't have him take off my plate. So I think the larger message there is just surrounding yourself with a good team. We've got 8 corporate folks now here in Austin or across the US. And they're all just absolute all-stars. They believe in our vision. They believe in what we're doing. We make sure we take care of our folks and they're well compensated and they feel like they're building something. But ultimately, just surrounding yourself with the right people at work and in your personal life. And then just making sure you have that one person that you can kind of lean on and really fully trust to get the job done.
Well, shout out to Alex. I love it. And I love the posts on LinkedIn. You guys are a fun bunch. His comments crack me up. Always a good laugh and a good, just like refreshing breath. Refreshing breath there. Yeah.
We've got some internal memes with him. His favorite comment is, "You drop this," and it's a crown emoji, and it's absolutely hilarious. He's a great guy. He's got a great LinkedIn persona. So yeah.
You dropped this, King. I get it. I get it. That's awesome. Well, going into it, give me one thing that you like to do outside of business. I'm only asking this question because I used to get asked this. People would be like, "What do you like? What do you do outside of podcasts and all this other stuff?" And I'd be like, "I don't know. I have 3 businesses, so I'm like just doing that." And that would be like my excuse of not having a hobby. But then I got into motorsports and I got into a couple other things, and now I'm like finally having or feel like I have stuff outside of the show or the podcast network to discuss at get-togethers or coffee meetups, etc. But what's one thing you like to do outside of business?
Yeah, I think that's funny, and I always, whenever I get this question, I remind myself to not say go to the gym, because that's the most cool. Oh, I like to go to the gym. Everybody goes to the gym. One thing I really gotten into is pickleball, which has been a lot of fun. We've got some great courts here in Austin, but a lot of pickleball. I've played chess my whole life, so that's a fun hobby of mine. There's a
you a master, or like how bad would I get destroyed playing against you?
It depends. I like to say I'm pretty good, not to pump my own tires, but I grew up in Albania, small country in Eastern Europe. Moved to the U.S. when I was 10, and
wow,
there wasn't much to do there other than play chess and soccer. So I think those are my 2 main hobbies. But yeah, man, you know how it is. Business takes up a lot, especially in hospitality, right? You often hear about business, but a lot of people can still clock out at like 5 or 6.
100%.
In hospitality, if our customers are working Saturday at midnight, we're probably in some capacity working on Saturday at midnight. So, it's hospitality, never sleeps. And yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Well, tell me, actually, I want to kind of jump into the Albania part. How was like your childhood growing up once you guys got to the US? I'm very curious. Like, were you just like, this is awesome? Like, tell me kind of the upbringing there.
Yeah, that's great. It's an important part of my life, but I can go on a bit of a tangent. So
we love tangents on the show. So
sneak that in. But yeah, man, I grew up in Albania, a small country in Eastern Europe. Albania has what's called a lottery system, and a lot of countries do. It's basically a legal way to migrate to the U.S. It's a U.S. lottery system. So they'll pick families from Albania or these other countries, and you get a green card, and then you get your citizenship in the U.S. It's how we grow our legal migration here. But yeah, it's I was there until 5th grade. When I moved over here, I spoke English pretty well. In Albania, they start teaching you English right off the bat, like a universal language. So I was able to fit in rather quickly. Definitely a culture shock, but it's been great. I mean, my name is Justin, and it's so funny because it's not an Albanian name. And I asked my parents, why'd you give me an American name? And my dad was like, well, I always knew we'd end up there. And, back then there was a dictionaries, and on the back, US dictionaries, there was a bunch of names. Mm-hmm. And he just had my grandma pick one. And that's yeah, my brother's name is Ronald. So it's a pretty hilarious story. But
you got the better end of the stick on that name pick then. Your grandma was like, this guy, he'll be okay. Ronald, on the other hand.
Exactly right.
That's so funny. Well, that's really cool. I didn't actually know that about the American lottery system or the Visa lottery system. That's actually really interesting. I love that approach. I think that's a great way to implement legal migration, to America. That's actually, wow, I can't believe it's not talked about more especially during the last line of politics that we've had this last couple of years.
Right.
But anyways, we're not a political show. We won't go down that road. But yeah, I love learning a little bit more about you. I didn't know that even, leading up to this call, and all of our listeners know that we do pre-chats and get to know the guests a little bit more. But I'm curious, 2025 kicking off very strong. I think we saw a lot of people take some time off last year, especially around the holidays, hopefully to reset, recharge, do whatever they needed to do. But January is always kind of that like kick everything into gear. What are you guys looking forward to this year? What's kind of on the horizon? What gets you guys excited as you're clocking in every day at FIDO? I'm just kind of curious, the internal excitement.
Man, I'll speak to what I can speak to. without sharing too much, because we're still in that,
For sure.
startup stage. I like to say, lot of cool stuff in the horizon, a lot of partnerships, growth. Of course, we have a lot of customers, either first-time customers to the service or customers switching over, where the case may be. But personally, really have been looking forward to really all the industry events. So up until this year, all the different brand names, different service offerings, we sort of laid low. But this year we really expect to, sponsor as many events as we can. And that's one, so we can get our brand name out there. But two, it's been great just meeting people like yourself and other people you see on LinkedIn. And then you see them at, we were at IMN a couple weeks ago, met, the top key guys, great bunch of guys, Summer led. So all these cool companies in this industry that are doing things that, are unique. Summer led, they're great. Shout out to them. I don't know how many shout outs I can give on this podcast, but
how much you want?
Top key, we've already sent some folks their way, but it's all about just supporting each other and meeting great people. But yeah, looking forward to Nashville in a couple of weeks. We'll be sponsoring there as well. And then the Women's Summit in Phoenix as well. And of course, getting ready for the big one in Verma. So personally looking forward to that the most, and, meeting folks and industry peers.
I love it. Well, I'm an investor in Top Key. So yeah, shout out to them. Good group there. And of course, Summer led. I love the ladies over there. They've built such an amazing company. I'm so impressed, and actually probably should get them on the show sometime soon. But I will see you in Arizona for Level Up Your Listing, the women's conference. Get to MC there a little bit every year. So it's always been fun. And yeah, every conference that we're going to be at, it's going to be a good time. I think we're going to have a lot of fun together.
Yeah, I agree. Looking forward to that.
Well, I love it. Justin, the last question I always like to ask every guest is for listeners who are curious to learn more, that want to reach out, that want to connect, they want to follow along the journey. Where can they go? We always ask one spot, but we're going to obviously link everything in the show notes, obviously. But I wanted to see what's the best place for people to reach out.
Yeah, best place is just getfido.com. We have different landing pages for all the podcasts, but the main one-stop shop is there. And if you've made it to the end of this episode, one of the things we've been offering, especially Wil's listeners, is a month free of our bin to curb service. But if you've made it to here, and when you fill out the form, you have to say, I heard it on the podcast. If you're switching service providers, we'll give you $50 for each unit you switch to us. So that really doesn't have a cap. You'll get the free month, and if you're switching 100 units, that's $5,000. But that's a sweet treat here at the end of the episode. We're really trying to grow this business, and we've got the ability to do so. So would love to reward your listeners on that.
I love that. That's a great offer, and that's all. I think when we were talking about partnerships for the shows that you guys are partnered with, including this one, I was like, hey, you got to have a good call to action, right? You got to have something that's good. And that's a very juicy offer. So Slick Talkers, make sure if you are not already with FIDO, get on over, switch on over. I highly recommend. I kind of joked about it on GMH this last week, but having FIDO's kind of what I think is the experience of having a 16-year-old take out my garbage instead of me doing it. So raising a kid and then be like, hey, it's your turn to take out the trash, not my turn, as my father did to me. So it's a good experience, and trust me, like honestly, the more I probably haven't even shared this on the show yet, but I'm no longer a property manager. I've actually exited my company, and I think that the more you can outsource in terms of this stuff, with the little logistics that you always forget, is going to be so much better. I couldn't speak more on it in the sense of you're trying to build a business. You're not trying to create a job for yourself. And it was the biggest decision that when I left, I said, we have to do this, and super glad we did. So awesome. Shout out to you guys. And
congrats on that.
Thank you. Yeah. But shout out to you guys for making it easier and making it enjoyable for people to actually provide hospitality. I'm super stoked for you guys. And so Slick Talkers, grab all the links in the show notes. Make sure you like and subscribe to all things FIDO. showing them the same love that you show Slick Talk each and every week. Justin, my friend, so good to see you. And of course, like always, we'll see you all again on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and thank you to our show partners for making Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast, possible. We hope you enjoyed the show, and we would love to connect with you outside of the podcast. So you can follow us on all of our social media channels for daily hospitality content, or find us on slicktalkthepodcast.com. And don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I'm your host, Wil Slickers, and we will see you guys all again next week.